Hi there. Today we're going to talk about friendship and love, and in the process, we're going to start out talking with attraction. Because, of course, attraction is at the basis of. Attraction is, of course, an initial desire to form relationships. And there's a lot of factors that lead to attraction, and the largest is proximity. Proximity, obviously, and it's not just being physically close to each other, although that's part of it. By proximity, what we really mean is this thing called functional distance. And functional distance is effectively the number of times that two people's paths will cross. Okay? So even if two people live, fairly far apart, but they shop at the same Starbucks, okay? Then their functional distance might actually be fairly close, and people might well be neighbors and may never see each other, and so maybe their functional distance is far, or different situations where people are neighbors but they share the same mailbox, and so all of a sudden their functional distance is close, right? So it's just a number of times that people interact with each other, or the likelihood of meeting. And so what happens is, why are we attracted to based on functional distance or proximity? Number one, similarity. We believe it or not, we are attracted to people that resemble ourselves. And if you shop at Starbucks, then people at Starbucks have some similarity to you, right? So clearly, those that are closest to you have the most similarity to you, whether it be age, income, ethnicity, etc. Okay, but also familiarity. And this is just a basic finding from cognitive psychology, is that familiar objects are simply processed faster, are processed smoothly. As just an interesting example right here, I'm jumping a bunch of slides, but look at this: the mirror exposure effect. And this is a basic idea in cognitive psychology or even in decision making research. We tend to choose that thing that we're familiar with, that thing that we recognize. In fact, this is called the recognition heuristic, to put it in a formal term. And that is that the more we have seen something, the more we recognize it, the more comfortable we are with it. And this is a deep rooted ancestral thing, because it's just very simple. If you have interacted with one person 100 times and you are still alive, chances are when you interact with that person the next time, they will not kill you, right? Because you just did. Now a random stranger comes up, you don't have any idea. You have nothing to base it on. So we are really programmed in a very deep ancestral way to prefer things that we're familiar with, and that is really what this McDonald's is all about. Because at one point I was wondering, what is McDonald's doing anymore with all their advertising dollars? I mean, everybody knows about McDonald's, and they know where it is and everything else, but the more you expose, the more comfortable. And so a lot of people refer to McDonald's as comfort food, and that's exactly what it is. It triggers these deep down ancestral, I feel familiar with it, and so I want to eat it. Okay? So, obviously, though, initial attraction is also based on physical attractiveness. Okay, more so in some cultures than others. Some cultures, physical attractiveness plays a smaller role. Well, it turns out that despite the fact that physical attractiveness might look superficially, you take a look at these 5 women that are all considered attractive, and you see on the surface there's a lot of differences between them. But if you look down in there, it turns out that they have very similar characteristics, including shape of face, hip to waist ratio, etc., etc. So they're going to have a whole bunch of things in common despite having all of these superficial levels. Well, in the same ancestral way that we're attracted to things we're familiar with, we're also repelled by people that have unhealthy skin, for example. Because skin is the most obvious way to signal health. There's no other way that you can look at a person, no other better way than skin to say, and so, we know that people spend, oh my God, how much money on cosmetics. Because as much as somebody might say, oh, appearances don't matter, you can't judge a book by its cover, this person right here is going to have an awfully hard time ever making a positive first impression. It does not matter what they do or how good they are. And this includes not just in attractiveness, like in dating situations, but also in just getting a job. I mean, I hate to say it, but there is a huge penalty for something like that. Um, Yeah, people spend more money on beauty products and on education. Can you imagine that? Holy crap. You might not think so because you're paying your tuition right now, but across your lifetime, all right? Physically attractive people receive all kinds of other benefits. Yeah, there's this problem, tyranny of the beautiful. That is, people have a mistaken belief that physically attractive people are somehow better in other ways as well, you know, smarter or faster or stronger or something like that. But just like we had said with the self-fulfilling prophecies in the previous topic, if an attractive child is expected by their teachers to be smarter, then they'll treat them differently, and so all of a sudden, even if there was no initial basis for this tyranny of the beautiful, self-fulfilling prophecies would almost inevitably ensure that such a thing is in fact true. We can see physically attractive candidates receive more votes. They've even done real elections and found that that's just the answer. One survey rated MBAs on a 5-point scale in terms of attractiveness, and each unit was associated with more money. Okay, and so it's just in many ways. In fact, yeah, even in a court of law, they broke it down, and they found people that were convicted of the same crime. 50 people, 100 people, same crime. What penalty did they get? And the severity of their penalty was related to their attractiveness. Kind of a scary idea. So we also often find that physical attractiveness is much more important in casual relationships than in long-term relationships. And often we match ourselves on attractiveness. All right. And so here's a cute little Dilbert cartoon. Here's Dilbert. He's going to apparently go on a date, and she says, frankly, I'm insulted, something like that. She says, because you asked me out on a date, it means you think we're equally attractive. And then she says, you better have a heck of a sexy car. And he says, well, it's electric, okay? And so the idea is that physical attractiveness is one of those commodities that people bring into a relationship. And so look at this silly little example. She brings in more attractiveness, he brings a sexy car, it balances out. And so in a lot of ways, it's like a resource exchange or a balance, okay? So it's really quite a powerful idea how this balances out. Getting acquainted, reciprocal liking. Yeah, it turns out the easiest way to get somebody to like you is to like them first, okay? Is to, I don't want to say ingratiate yourself, but to flatter somebody. If you flatter somebody, they're much more likely to like you. That's all there is to it. Perhaps you've heard of the two little phrases, opposites attract or birds of a feather flock together. And opposites attract is not true. It doesn't seem to be true at any point. And of course, there's exceptions to the rule. I mean, remember the whole idea of correlational work. There are exceptions, of course, but as a rule, birds of a feather flock together. We prefer we're attracted to people similar to ourselves. Much research has been done where they take a participant's face and they sort of take a random stranger and morph faces together. And so you're looking at a new person as a combination of a random stranger and your own face, and you find that to be the most attractive thing you can imagine. It's like, okay, that's a little bit freaky. But yeah, people tend to be similar in intelligence, attitudes, etc. And this is not just in dating partners, but also in friendships as well. And yeah, I'm sorry to say this is just how it works. I honestly don't. I mean, I don't know closely any Trump voter. I just don't. I just don't know them because they just don't hang around in the same circles that I do, because that's just how it works. And if we talked about functional distance, that's to say that a Trump voter and I would have very little opportunity to engage in some kind of a interaction. It just wouldn't. So it's kind of a strange world. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, all right. You know what? That sounds too touchy-feely.
goodness. Yeah, self just oh, this is so painfully difficult, but you can read it, and again, I'm telling you, this is just touchy-feely. This is just not me. But I like this communal nature of friendship, mutually shared activities and support. That's always good. All right. Women tend to have relationships that are more emotionally based, right, on emotional connections, whereas men, they have a shared common activity that they do together, okay? It turns out that, maybe if you remember the movie Harry Met Sally a long, long time ago, Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan, Crystal said women can never be friends. And he was on to something, because the boundary in friendship and romantic attraction can interfere with the friendship. It turns out that gay and lesbians are likely to maintain contact with a former partner, maintain a friendship of some kind. Okay. Well, the way we think of friendship is actually pretty weird, and I need to go back to the distinction between individualistic cultures and collectivistic cultures. Um, in individualistic cultures, we can think of, as I said, in individualistic cultures, we can think of the individual as having an existence separate from others. Okay? I am an independent of others. Okay? In more of a collectivistic context, what happens is that my very definition of who I am is in fact defined by the social relationships that I have. Okay? And so what you find is in more collectivistic cultures, you find that friendships are forever. Okay? You can't get rid of a friend. It kind of like in an American context with an in-law. Even if your in-laws are something you don't want, you're stuck with them. Okay? And so all of a sudden, people from more collective cultures, you take a look, these are bumper stickers from Ghana. Ghana is a much more collectivistic culture, and you find because they cannot get rid of somebody that is in their inner circle. You can't get rid of these people that you call friends. Even if you've drifted apart and become completely different from each other, you're stuck. Okay? And so what happens is people from Ghana report having far fewer friends. Okay? But the ones that they have, they've had for a really long time. However, at the same time, people in Ghana, is that on this slide or is that on the next slide? Come on, this is running really slow. No. Okay. So what we see, people in Ghana also have more enemy America does. See, in American context, you have somebody that you fall in favor with, somebody that you don't like. You just stop with them. I mean, isn't that what's what I told my kids when they were little? Oh, so-and-so is being mean. Well, then don't spend time with them, right? But from more of an interdependent or collectivistic context, you can't just stop hanging out with somebody, okay? That's not a choice. And so people in Ghana report fewer friends and more enemies, okay? It's just a different context and different way of thinking about it. All right. So when it comes to love, we can talk about sexual orientation first off. Here we go. Sexual orientation first off. A person's preference for emotional and sexual relationships with individuals of and depend upon the gender. We all know the difference between homosexual, heterosexual, and bisexual. More similar. Yeah. Romantic love. Yeah, you know what? This idea of romantic love is actually interesting. It turns out that, and I think we're going to talk more about this in the next topic, but romantic love has been found in every single culture that has ever been studied. They've gone out to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of, westernized cultures, European cultures, Asian cultures, but they've also gone to little tiny, isolated cultures in South America or something, in the rainforest or something. And it just doesn't matter the culture they go to, they find evidence of romantic love. Okay? And romantic love, I mean, it is what it is, but Sternberg has this notion of triangular theory of love, that in order for love to occur, there's really three things that must occur: intimacy, passion, and commitment. Well,
in these romantic love, just like in childhood. Let me see, what do I have here? Yeah, we find that this notion. This is actually pretty interesting. Okay, we're going to put a connection here. First, we have a romantic love, and now we're going to talk about love for our children. And the love that we have for our children is most definitely not the same. I mean, when you say I love my child, it is most certainly not the same as I love my spouse, right? This word love is a clearly different idea. And so what we find though is both love your spouse and love your children, despite being radically different, are both based on this conception of attachment. So attachment is this idea that infants and parents, or even spouses or something, they connect to each other in some way. Well, it turns out that the attachment appears between infant and caretaker or parent or something is seems to be biologically rooted. In fact, you take a look. It turns out that the features of a baby, whether it be an actual human baby or even a puppy or something like that, those features are designed to trigger hormonal flows in the adult, which trigger a protectiveness kind of response. But at the same time, infants are born ready for attachment as well, because even when a baby is born, they prefer the sound of their own mother's voice. They prefer the smell of their own mother's breast pad, and they're drawn to them. Well, here is in fact a neat little image here. You see this is Mickey Mouse being drawn across, 50 years or something. And you can see what happened is the artist behind Mickey Mouse, they changed his features, and as you move from left to right, they incorporated more baby-like features to make him cuter. In particular, you can see the size of the eyes relative to the rest of the face. And there's other features as well, and if you're an artist, you know how to do this. But clearly, there are these baby-like features that can trigger these attachment responses. Well, it turns out that there's a fascinating work on attachment styles. This is Bowlby's work, and what basically happens is to test attachment styles, what they'll do is they do what Mary Ainsley's strange situation test. So they'll take a baby and their carrot, usually their mother, an infant and their mother, and they'll bring them into a strange room. Okay, but it's filled with cool toys. All right, and there's another person in the room, an adult or whatever. It's a psychologist, I'm sure. And then what's going to happen is they're going to check out how the baby, is playing. And then after a few minutes, mom is going to leave the room for about 2 minutes, and then she's going to come back. Okay? And they're going to measure the infant's reaction to mom's departure and the infant's reaction to mom's return. Okay? And they're going to use the infant's reaction to gauge what they're going to call attachment style. And so, infants can be securely attached. And so when mom is in the room, they feel secure. They feel they can explore the new toys. They can. When mom leaves, they're bothered, but when mom comes back, they're okay again. This kind of a thing. Children that are securely attached, actually, it's pretty interesting looking. The typical response is it doesn't matter how scary the room is, as long as they have one hand holding mom in some way, just holding her leg or something, they can use the other hand to explore all kinds of crazy things. Okay? Well, it turns out that there's other attachment styles that are less potentially, and I'm just going to use, this is an American bias, so I'll say it right here. Other attachment styles are less healthy. Some infants are what we might call insecurely attached, or all kinds of these other types of attachment, avoidant attachment. And so, say for example, mom leaves the room and the infant doesn't care. Mom comes back and the infant doesn't care. Okay, so that's considered to be, quote, not healthy from an American perspective. Or mom leaves the room and the child just panics. Mom comes back and the child won't calm down again. So these are considered, quote, unhealthy styles. But what we find is that in the United States, right there up the middle, you can see that the most common attachment style is in fact that, quote, secure and healthy one. And so these attachment styles in many ways form the basis of all social relationships from here on out, right? All social relationships start ultimately at this level. And we see that the anxious, ambivalent, and the avoidant attachment styles are relatively small occurrences. But if you look in other parts of the world, like Germany or an Israeli kibbutz, all of a sudden the majority of children in Germany have the avoidant attachment style, and the majority of children in the Israeli kibbutz have an anxious ambivalent. And so all of a sudden, here we are with our Western bias, and we're like, oh, secure attachment forms healthy relationships. So what are you saying? All Germans and Israelis are unhealthy? Come on, how incredibly Western biased is it? But it's an interesting idea to think that the attachment style that an infant will show does in fact form the groundwork for all social relationships that are going to follow. And then finally, romantic relationships do in fact end. Why do they end? Well, number one, premature commitment. And I believe we're going to talk more in detail on this one in the next topic. But clearly, commitments can be made before they should be. Ineffective communication and conflict management. Yeah, clearly we've seen that in the communication chapter topic. Becoming bored. Oh, yeah. Availability of a more attractive opportunity, all right, and low levels of satisfaction. Yeah, it turns out that relationships, even though people don't like to admit it, all relationships are ultimately transactional. Kind of like Dilbert and the girl there. She brings in more attractiveness, he brings in a sexy car. And so it turns out that if people view that their relationship is out of balance, and this is a problem because, let's say, for example, somebody who is a narcissist, right? A narcissist will believe that they're bringing this much to the relationship, but their partner may believe they're only bringing this much. And so all of a sudden, what's going to happen is the partner thinks I get this much, the partner gives back this much, and they say our relationship is imbalanced. But the narcissistic person says, no, because I'm so awesome, I'm bringing this much in. And so if we feel they're out of balance, often the relationships will end. All right, we'll stop there, and I can't remember exactly what the next topic is, but I swear it was marriage. Find out. Okay.